Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast episode of Andy's Witchcraft by me, Sacred Moon. I hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. Today's episode, we are discussing the next upcoming Wheel of the Year holiday. I am so excited. The next holiday is called Imbolc, and it's super great, and it's a really good way to connect and prepare for the spring. I feel like preparing for something as simple as the season kind of instills hope in us that we have a future, at least for the next month or so, and that we have purpose and that we're working towards that purpose. It's just such a great reminder, and that's why I just love preparing for Wheel of the Year holidays and also just preparing for upcoming seasons. So without further ado, let's get started. So you may be asking, if you're a new witch, what is Imbolc exactly? Well, Imbolc is a Wheel of the Year holiday celebrated from February 1st to February 2nd. The word Imbolc means in the belly of the mother, because the seeds of spring are beginning to stir in the belly of Mother Earth. You may also hear it being referred to as a less common name called Oimelc. And the term Oimelc means ewe's milk. And the reason that this holiday is revolving around ewe's milk is because around this time of the year, many herd animals give birth to their first offspring of the year or are heavily pregnant. The ewe produce milk at this time. And so this holiday kind of is named by that. Imbolc is a holiday that marks the halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Imbolc's celebration dates back to the pre-Christian era in the British Isles. The earliest mentions of this holiday in Irish literature were found in 10th century poetry from that time. The poetry relates the holiday to, again, ewe's milk being used in purification rituals. And so this holiday revolves around the theme of purification, cleansing, protection. These will kind of give you ideas on how to celebrate. The holiday was traditionally aligned with the first day of spring and the idea of rebirth. So again, cleansing rituals, purification that allows you to start fresh and new. So now that you know this basic information, let's go discuss some mythologies and traditions surrounding Imbolc. Now, there aren't too many mythologies around this holiday, but there is one, and she is a goddess who many believe is the original reason for celebrating the holiday. So I called her the OG Imbolc myth, and if you are familiar with Imbolc, you know who this is. This is Bridget the goddess, and this is opposed to Saint Bridget. So they're two different entities. Do not get them mixed up. So Imbolc celebrations at the beginning took the form of a festival in honor of the pagan goddess Bridget, who was evoked in fertility blessings and oversaw poetry, crafts, and prophecy. Again, the key word is poetry, and that's why many original mentions of the holiday are found in poems. The word Bridget, or name Bridget, means high one or exalted one. This name reflects her nature as a solar deity and also her connection to crafting and wisdom. Bridget is the daughter of Dagda, who is the oldest god in the Celtic pantheon, and he was also the Fae leader of the Tuath de Danann. Because of this, we believe her connection to healing and wisdom may have been passed on from her father, who himself was a master of magic and mysticism. Bridget also had two sisters who were also named Bridget, but speculations believe that these sisters are meant to symbolize different aspects of the same goddess. Myths about Bridget's birth say she was born at sunrise with rays of sunlight radiating from her head, and that she drank the milk of a mystical cow from the spirit world. As she grew up, Bridget became the wife of the High King Brez, and she is said to have invented keening. For those of you who don't know, keening is a traditional wailing for the dead practiced at funerals by Irish and Scottish women. This kind of knowledge reflects her status as a goddess of life and death, and also protector of cemeteries. Bridget is also known as protector of domesticated animals because all of the animals she kept were protected by her. She had Fae and Men, who were 2 oxen, Triath, who was the king of the boars and appeared in the Arthurian legend, and Serb, who was a powerful ram and king of the sheep. Historically, Bridget was worshipped by the Fylid, who were a class of poets and historians among the Celts of ancient Ireland and Britain. Again, this is why first mentions of the holiday were in poems, because poets were the ones who mainly worshipped her. Bridget is also the goddess of illumination, fire, renewal, creativity, and invention. So with all this knowledge, you can invoke Bridget for protection workings, especially if you're protecting cemeteries, if you're protecting animals, if you're protecting your own spirit, your own soul, your shadow self. You can definitely invoke her for that. On top of that, you could use fire elemental magic because she is so strongly associated with the element of fire. Now, there is also another pagan holiday, and I feel like I want to mention this because it's very strongly connected to Imbolc, and it's called Februaria. Februaria was held near the end of the Roman calendar year, and it's important to note that originally the Roman year only had 10 months. They counted out 10 months between March and December, and they kind of disregarded the quote-unquote dead months of January and February. But later, Etruscans came along and added these 2 months back into the equation. They planned to make January the first month, but the expulsion of the Etruscan dynasty prevented this from happening, and so March 1st was actually considered the first day of the year. Februaria was a holiday dedicated to the month of February, and that month was dedicated to Februus, because it was the month in which Rome was purified by making offerings and sacrifices to the gods of the dead. Because of the association with fire as a method of purification, at some point the celebration of Februaria became associated with Vesta, who was a hearth goddess. February 2nd is also considered the day of Juno Februa, who was the mother of the war god Mars. And so basically, Februaria is a month-long period of sacrifice and atonement, and it involves offerings to the gods, using prayers and sacrifices. Again, very similar to Imbolc because of its emphasis on protection and its emphasis on fire magic. But it's basically just the different deities and different cultures. Februaria was more for Romans, and Imbolc at the time was more for Celtics and Irish and Scottish people. Now, let's talk about the Christian counterpart of Imbolc. Again, strongly overlapping with Imbolc, and so it is totally possible to celebrate both in the very same ways. The only difference could be the deities you venerate. So for Christian counterparts like Candlemas you can definitely dedicate to Yahweh, Asherah, Jesus, anybody in the Abrahamic pantheon. And so Candlemas is a Christian holiday celebrated on February 2nd, and it is traced to 4th century Greece. This holiday celebrates the day when Mother Mary, in obedience to Jewish law, went to the temple in Jerusalem to be purified 40 days after the birth of her son, Jesus, and to present him to God as her firstborn. This holiday, therefore, celebrates 3 occasions. Number 1, the presentation of the child Jesus. Number 2, Jesus' first entry into the temple. And 3, the Virgin Mary's purification. Similarly to Imbolc, Candlemas, again, is a purification holiday. It celebrates the return of light after winter's darkness, and so fire is a very strong symbol here. As it celebrates the return of the light, candles are often used to observe this holiday, and many Orthodox Christians celebrate this event by bringing beeswax candles to their local church and requesting that these candles be blessed to be used in church or at home. It is also a tradition to prepare and cook a crepe while holding a coin in hand, And this is to assure wealth and happiness until the next Candlemas celebration. Now, if you don't think that that is witchcraft, that is magic, you are incorrect, because witches do the exact same things in using coins and their spell workings to manifest wealth. And now here we have an example of Christians doing the same thing. Anyways, it is possible that Candlemas is a Christian adaptation of the Roman holiday, Februalia, which is also a purification and cleansing celebration. And so it's often because, again, the origins of Candlemas were in Greece, and the Greeks often took ideas from Romans, and Romans took ideas from the Greeks, and they kind of, overlapped in that way. And so this was a very common occurrence, and this is just evidence of it. Now, some European Christians believe that a sunny Candlemas means another 40 days of cold and snow. I paused because I want you to process that. Does that sound familiar to you? Does it sound familiar? Stick around and you'll see why. To conclude, again, Candlemas is a very witchy Christian holiday. Hello, manifesting wealth, protection using candles, purification rituals with holy water. Totally a way to to celebrate Candlemas as a Christian witch. Totally possible. Next, I want to kind of discuss how Bridget the Goddess became Saint Bridget. Now, somehow, somewhere along the line of history, there's no evidence of any one point where this happened, but Bridget was adopted into Christianity as Saint Bridget. As one of Ireland's 3 patron saints, the Catholic Church claims Saint Bridget was a historical person, with accounts of her life written by monks dating back to the 8th century. These stories contain aspects in common with the details of the pagan goddess Bridget, and illustrates the transition from pagan to Christian worship. So I'm going to share a little bit about Saint Bridget's life, and you'll see how she overlaps with Bridget the Goddess. Now, born in Ireland around 453 AD, Saint Bridget was the daughter of a slave and a chieftain who was celebrated at an early age for her agricultural knowledge. With no interest in marrying, Bridget's goal was to create a monastery in Kildare, which is supposedly the former site of a shrine to the Celtic goddess of the same name. Now, Bridget lived her entire life there. She was renowned for her charity to the poor, and many stories demonstrated her healing powers. Saint Bridget was also a friend to Saint Patrick, whose preaching kind of set her on the course towards faithfulness in God at an early age. She became Ireland's first nun, and she is said to have died in 524 AD. The remains of her skull and hand are claimed to be in possession of churches in Portugal. In the 12th century, legend holds that the nuns of Kildare attended to a fire built in Saint Bridget's honor. The fire burned for 500 years and produced no ash, and only women were allowed in proximity of the fire. Now, this story really got me thinking of how Saint Bridget is really an amazing work for feminist activism. If you want to get in touch with the divine feminine, Saint Bridget is really good for that because of this story, because of the fact that she emphasized women's holiness in these kinds of miracles. Now, whether the story of the saint is real or is fabricated from the church, no one really knows, but faith in her has helped so many Christians all over the world. But still, I want to emphasize that her legend as a saint should not erase the existence of Bridget the Goddess. If Saint Bridget did exist, Bridget the Goddess also does exist. The existence of one does not negate the other. I want to emphasize that because so many people believe that if you believe in Saint Bridget, that means you don't believe in Bridget the Goddess, and I think that's absolutely false. You can believe in both. Anywho, the celebration of Saint Bridget's Day on February 1st was put in place by the church. Some say it was done to replace Imbolc. I'm kind of inclined to believe that, but I leave my opinions. On her feast day, an effigy of Saint Bridget of Kildare is traditionally washed in the ocean and surrounded by candles to dry, and stalks of wheat are transformed into cross talismans known as Bridget's crosses. Saint Bridget is the patron saint of Irish nuns, newborns, midwives, dairymaids, and cattle. And like the goddess Bridget, St. Bridget is associated with milk and fire. So that is it for kind of like the Christian counterpart of Imbolc, but I don't want to really stop there because you know me. It is time to discuss biblical associations with Imbolc. Now, obviously, the Bible doesn't directly mention Imbolc. However, it does mention aspects of Imbolc season, and these Bible verses can be used in spell workings should you choose to use Bible verses in your spells. So, first off, we're going to talk about some purification rituals. There's so many mentions, way more than what I have here. So, don't let this, restrain you. Explore. But these are some ideas to get you started. The first verse I have discussing purification rituals is Exodus chapter 19, verse 10. The Lord also said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments." Next, we have Exodus chapter 29, verse 4. "Then you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the doorway of the tent of meeting and wash them with water." Next, we have Numbers chapter 8, verses 6 through 7. "Take the Levites from among the sons of Israel and cleanse them. Thus you shall do to them. For their cleansing, sprinkle purifying water on them, and let them use a razor over their whole body and wash their clothes, and they will be clean." Next, we have 2 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 6. "He also made 10 basins in which to wash, and he set 5 on the right side and 5 on the left, to rinse things for the burnt offering. But the sea was for the priests to wash in." Next is Leviticus chapter 16, verse 4. "He shall put on the holy linen tunic, and the linen undergarments shall be next to his body, and he shall be girded with the linen sash and attired with the linen turban. These are holy garments. Then he shall bathe his body in water and put them on." Next, we have Malachi chapter 3, verse 3. "He will sit as a smelter and the purifier of silver, and he will purify the sons of Levi and refine them like gold and silver, so that they may present to the Lord offerings in righteousness." Next, we have 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 22. "Since you have in obedience to the truth purified your souls for a sincere love of the brethren, fervently love one another from the heart." Next, we have Ezra chapter 6, verse 20. "For the priests and the Levites had purified themselves together, all of them were pure. Then they slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the exiles, both for their brothers, the priests, and for themselves." Next, we have 1 John chapter 3, verse 3. "And everyone who has this hope fixed on him purifies himself, just as he is pure." Finally, we have Luke chapter 2, verses 22 through 39. Now, this is going to be a long one, but this is all related to purification, and I feel like it's important to mention. "When the time came for the purification rites required by the law of Moses, Joseph and Mary took him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every firstborn male is to be consecrated to the Lord, and to offer a sacrifice in keeping with what is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of doves or 2 young pigeons. Now there was a man in Jerusalem called Simeon, who was righteous and devout. He was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was on him. It had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he would not die before he had seen the Lord's Messiah. Moved by the Spirit, he went into the temple courts. When the parents brought in the child Jesus to do for him what the custom of the law required, Simeon took him in his hands and praised God, saying, 'Sovereign Lord, as you have promised, you may now dismiss your servant in peace. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you have prepared in the sight of all nations, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people in Israel.' The child's father and mother marveled at what was said about him. Then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, his mother, "This child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." There was also a prophet, Anna, and the daughter of Penuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was very old. She had lived with her husband 7 years after her marriage, and then was a widow until she was 84. She never left the temple, but worshipped night and day, fasting and praying. Coming up to them at that very moment, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. When Joseph and Mary had done everything required by the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own town of Nazareth. Now, obviously, that whole verse was all about Candlemas, and so this is a really good section of the Bible to read and reflect on if you choose to celebrate Candlemas. Now, kind of the second and last theme of Imbolc that is mentioned several times in the Bible is agriculture and field preparation. Because farmers start preparing their fields for the first sowing around this time, I decided to put Bible verses on this as well. The first one is Leviticus chapter 26, verse 4. "I will give you rains in their season, and the land will yield its crops, and the trees of the field will yield their fruit." Next, we have Haggai chapter 2, verse 19. "Is the seed still in the barn? As yet the vine, the fig tree, the pomegranate, and the olive tree have not yielded fruit. But from this day on I will bless you." Next, we have Isaiah chapter 30, verse 23. "He will give rain for the seed you sow in the ground, and the food that comes from the land will be rich and plentiful." Next, we have Proverbs chapter 12, verse 11. "Anyone who works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who chases fantasies lacks judgment." Next, we have Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 9. "As for the farmer, he plows the land and cultivates it, but the fruit is not always ripe when he wants it." Next, we have 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10. "For even when we were with you, we gave you this rule: if a man will not work, he will not eat." And we have 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 9. "For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building." Next, we have Isaiah chapter 28, verses 24 to 25. "Does the farmer always plow and never sow? Does he continually open and harrow his ground? When he has leveled its surface, does he not scatter black cumin and sow cumin?" Next, we have Psalms chapter 65, verse 10. "You water its furrows abundantly, settling its ridges, softening it with showers, and blessing its growth." And finally, we have James chapter 5, verses 7 through 8. "Be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains." So those are all of the Bible verses that I have that describe themes of Imbolc. I hope you enjoyed that section. Now, to move on, we are going to discuss Buddhist traditions during Imbolc. And this info is something I just recently found out. So I'm super excited about this because it literally shows that there are other Buddhist witches out there. I personally have been shamed by Buddhists saying that Buddhism is not about this witchy stuff and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, well, it can be. It can be. And this is evidence of that. And it made me so happy to see that there are other Buddhist witches out there. Really excited. So, I'll get to the point now. Now that Buddhism is beginning to establish itself in Western Europe, there is a movement to reinterpret pagan festivals from a Buddhist perspective. The Triratna Buddhist community has a program of honoring the 5 female Buddhas on the day and time of the year associated with each of them. The cycle begins with the summer solstice and female Buddha Mamaki, the autumn equinox, which is a ceremony dedicated to Pandaravasini, the female Buddha of the Western direction associated with dusk and the wisdom of uniqueness. Samayatara, the female Buddha of the northern direction, is associated with midnight and the wisdom of action, and she's celebrated on Halloween or Samhain. Akasadhatesvari, the female Buddha at the center of the mandala, beyond time and space, and she's celebrated during the winter solstice or Yule. And during Imbolc, because this holiday surrounds worshiping the divine feminine, Buddhists honor many female Buddhas. For example, Tara and Guan Yin. The lighting of a candle or an oil lamp represents the light of wisdom, illuminating the darkness of ignorance. So you could see how they're not really stealing ideas. They're still acknowledging pagan festivals, but they're celebrating it in a way that aligns with their Buddhist perspectives, their own Buddhas rather than deities. Their interpretations for metaphors. So because Imbolc is all about fire and lighting up darkness, they interpret darkness rather than a physical darkness where springtime is coming and the sun is returning. They interpret it as the light of wisdom. So you can see how these ideas are lining up, and you don't need to choose one or the other. You can kind of mix and match and celebrate in your own way based on your own beliefs. In February, Buddhists also celebrate Parinirvana Day or Nirvana Day. And this is celebrated annually on February 8th by some countries and February 15th by others. Regardless of the day you celebrate it, the point of this day is to commemorate the death of the Buddha when he attained complete nirvana, or as it's known, parinirvana. Now, Nirvana Day is a day to contemplate the Buddha's teachings. Some monasteries and temples hold meditation retreats. Others open their doors to lay people, and the lay people bring gifts of money or household goods to support the monks and nuns in those monasteries. In monasteries, Nirvana Day is treated as a social occasion, and so food is prepared and some bring presents. But the whole point of it is to connect with the community and to talk with one another, especially about the Buddha. On Nirvana Day, Buddhists think about their lives and how they can gain the perfect peace of nirvana, what they can do, how they can improve from their past mistakes, and they remember friends or relatives who have recently passed away. They reflect on the fact that death is a part of life for everyone, and it's okay, because one day we will reach enlightenment, which is way better than anything that is on this earth. In Theravada Buddhism, the Buddha's parinirvana, birth, and enlightenment are all observed together in an observance called Vesak, which is usually in April or May. So they don't really celebrate Nirvana Day. They celebrate Vesak, and they just celebrate it all at once. But again, regardless of that, we acknowledge the importance of reaching nirvana and what the Buddha has done for us. And I just really love it. And this will be my first year celebrating, and I'm so excited. Now, remember when I said that Christians who believe that a sunny Candlemas means another 40 days of winter and snow? And how that sounded familiar? This is why. Let's talk about the secular Imbolc, as I like to call it. I think it's pretty, I like to come up with nicknames. Groundhog Day. February 2nd is also Groundhog Day. This holiday began in the United States in 1887 as a stunt by a newspaper in Punxsutawney. I cannot pronounce that word for the life of me, but it's in Pennsylvania, and it has endured to this day. The idea is that a groundhog exiting its burrow can predict whether winter will stay or go based on whether the groundhog sees its shadow. If it sees its shadow, it will retreat to its den and winter will go on for 6 more weeks. And if it doesn't see its shadow, spring will come early. Groundhog Day is believed to be an adaptation of a German Candlemas tradition, which involves a badger. And there have been attempts to portray Groundhog Day as a modern offshoot of Imbolc, But again, the 2 days are not really directly related. It wasn't because of Imbolc that Groundhog Day came to be. Again, it was a newspaper stunt. It was a way to make more money, get people to buy newspaper more. It was all about finances and capitalism, which is way off of what Imbolc is about. So, that being said, that's all I will say about that. I just think it's just really cool to see all the different holidays and cultures, practices worldwide on this. Finally, not finally, my bad. Next, I will talk about some Imbolc associations. So these are items you can include on an Imbolc altar if you choose to make one. So the element, it's fire. I literally been saying that all episode, but it's a fire festival, so fire is its main element. Colors you can put on your altar for Imbolc are light green, soft pink, pale yellow, pastel blue, pastel purple, any pastel colors, and also white, gold, and silver. Foods and drinks you can put on your altar as an offering to your deities and spirit guides or spirit team, whatever you may have, are honey, milk, oats, butter, seeds and grain, bread, root vegetables, dried fruit, fermented foods, baked foods, cider, herbal tea, and pancakes. Pancakes is an odd one out, but they're round and golden like the sun. And so, plus with the Candlemas where it's common to make crepes. So pancakes is a common thing. And if you don't have these individual, like separate ingredients, like for example, you could put honey nut Cheerios on your altar. Like that's literally a mix of honey, oats, and if you choose to put milk in it, but yeah. So, those are foods you could put on your altar as an offering. Next, let's discuss crystals. I have two kind of categories for this. One is crystals for Bridget, if you want to work with Bridget during this holiday. The crystals you could put are carnelian. This is for Bridget as a hearth keeper. Citrine, which is, again, Bridget as a hearth keeper. Fire agate, which is Bridget as goddess of the forge. Garnet, which is Bridget as healer. Pyrite, good for Bridget as healer. And ruby for Bridget as goddess of the forge. So whatever you want to celebrate, the goddess Bridget as, you could choose crystals that reflect that. And crystals that you could use to sell for your Imbolc altar in general, not necessarily for Bridget, are blue lace agate, clear quartz, selenite, snowflake obsidian, rose quartz, lepidolite, and amethyst. Now we'll talk about some symbols. Symbols for this holiday are Bridget's cross, ribbons, white candles, wells, corn dolls, grain dollies, sun wheels, plows, and fire. Animals that are good for Imbolc are burrowing animals like a groundhog. And then you could also have bears, like bear statues on your altar, deer, lamb, sheep, cows, and swans. Plants and herbs good to work with for Imbolc are acorns, angelica, basil, blackberry, chamomile, crocus, jasmine, lavender, rosemary, and snowdrop. Deities and spiritual beings you can work with for Imbolc are Mother Mary, Bridget, the goddess or the saint, Vesta, Juno, Phoebus, Hestia, Hera, Aphrodite, Eros, and if you're Buddhist, you can work with the female Buddhas that I mentioned in the Buddhist section. These were Tara and Guan Yin. And then finally, spell work. Spell work you could do for this holiday are spells for creativity, spells for spiritual awakening, motivation spells, cleansing spells, and shadow work spells. Now finally, this is the final section. Ways you can celebrate Imbolc. These are specific ideas to get you started if you want to celebrate. The first thing you could do is let go of things, physically or spiritually. Now, what do I mean by physically letting things go? On top of just, letting go of people who no longer serve you, you could do some spring cleaning. This is the time of the year to do that. Rehome your items that you no longer use. Donate them, especially. This is a good time to help those in need. Or if you don't have a reliable place to donate them, you could give them to friends who will show them some love. And spiritually letting go of things, we're talking cord cutting rituals, banishing rituals, cleansing rituals, and then some meditation to learn what you need to let go of and learn not to cling to any attachments you may have. The next way you can celebrate are offerings to deities, especially if you work with the deities I listed earlier. Again, I will refresh your memory on some ideas of offerings. We got wine, honey, milk, olive oil, fresh fruit. On top of that, you can make crosses or corn dollies and dedicate them to your deities. And you can say prayers, some chants or mantras, or sing some songs or play music, whatever you prefer. The next idea is to garden and start to plant your seeds. This is the time to prepare for the upcoming spring. You have to prepare the earth for spring. So this is a time to get your supplies ready, get the soil ready, start to turn the soil, put in some seeds. Hopefully it won't be snowing around this time so that you can actually do this stuff. But if not, maybe pot some plants inside your home. That's a good idea too. The next idea I have is to create meals with the intention for what you want to accomplish in the next coming year or even in the next week in general. Just, manifesting in kitchen magic is a really good idea. Again, it's fire. Cooking involves fire, and so that's a good way. The next idea is to go outside and enjoy the increased sunlight. That's a very mundane way. It's great for closeted witches, broom closet witches. So if you just go outside and sunbathe and whisper a prayer of thanks to your deities or to Mother Earth in general, that is a good way to celebrate too. Next, you can consecrate your candles. Use the oils and herbs I listed previously and make your own Imbolc candle. Use candles that are Imbolc colors. Pastel colored candles are really cool. I love them. Pastels are my favorite color in general. So definitely would recommend. On top of consecrating your candles, we have light a fire. These don't have to be candles if you don't have any, but if you have a bonfire in the backyard, if you have a fireplace, you could do that. Or you could visualize fire in your mind. If it's not safe to light a fire in or out of your home, just visualize it in your mind, your own candle, burning it and manifesting what you want. Finally, you can do some fire scrying divination. Now, this is the perfect divination for this fire festival holiday. I personally don't know too much about it, but you could always look it up. I think it's pretty cool. It's all about interpreting how the candle melts and the wax shapes and the candles, the flame's activity. If it's a big flame, small, if it's blue or orange. There's all sorts of interpretations, and I think it's a really cool divination method to learn. So that is the end of this episode. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you learned something, and I hope you find ways to celebrate it as your own. If you're listening to this podcast episode on YouTube and you like this content, give it a like, a comment, and a subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, give the podcast a follow so you could get updates and notifications when new episodes are out. You could also follow me on social media and get various updates on my own craft, on my personal life, learn more about me. You could shoot me a DM and ask me any questions you may have, and I will try my best to answer. That'll be in the link tree below. On top of that, if you want another way to get a hold of me with a more guaranteed response, join my Discord server, Crystal Caverns. We are a server for ages for pretty much all ages, but because a lot of most of our members are like young adults and teenagers, or we typically don't want anyone like too old to maintain the comfort level of our minors on the server. But join the server, and you can totally learn more and connect with other witches. We'd love to have you. Please do join. And I think that is it. That is all I have to say. So, yep, follow me on social media, join the server, and hopefully you will hear my voice again in 2 weeks when I release the next episode. Blessed be everyone. Have a wonderful day, a week, month, and year.